Go! This is Ray's Talk Show with your virtual big brother, Ray Collazo. If you're super talented, service-oriented, and you're just looking for some mentorship in a community that's going to help you get inspired and support you in your dreams so you can go for it and be 100% every moment of your life, you found the Big Brother Ray community. Thank you so much for joining us. And if you're on the Blab, thank you for joining us on the Blab. This live streaming service is definitely a game changer. And for those on the podcast, Ray's podcast, listening to this with our original podcast audience, we always are very appreciative of you joining us here on Ray's podcast. But let me tell you something. You got to get down with this Blab. We are on every Tuesday and Thursday night, 10 p.m. Eastern, 9 p.m. Central, 7 p.m. Pacific, and whatever time they feel like it is in Arizona. They go by their own rules out there in the Southwest. Thank you so much for joining us. Again, this is your virtual Big Brother, Ray Collazo. You can check out, again, us on our live stream on Blab every Tuesday and Thursday night, 10 p.m. Eastern at blab.im/Ray's Podcast, as well as check out all of our content, over 200 episodes of Ray's Podcast, lots of resources and mentorship in a great Big Brother Ray community. Just check out bigbrotherray.com. That's bigbrotherray.com and rayspodcast.com. We have a very special guest with us. Many of us are looking, whether we're nonprofit managers or just dreamers, people that are really going for it in their lives and have a special project or have a mission, have an organization, have a group that is struggling to raise some money and get the resources that they need to truly make the impact they were meant to, but oftentimes feel like those resources are out of reach. Well, we got you back here at the Big Brother Race community. We've brought a great friend to the show and a fundraising guru, Alex Easdale. Welcome to Ray's Talk Show.
Oh, thank you, Ray. Thank you so much for having me.
Alex is the president and founder of Forging Alliances. Forging Alliances is a great company based in South Florida, and they're an international company that's focused on consulting for nonprofits as well as political and other sorts of fundraising, leadership development, capacity building, and education management. Alex has worked with organizations like Hispanics in Philanthropy, and most recently was worked in a senior position in higher education for Ana Jimenez in South Florida, and also one of our Democracia USA alumni. Got to definitely shout out the DUSA crew. Alex, welcome to Ray's Talk Show. Way too long, way overdue, brother.
Yeah, I agree. And we gotta do this more often.
This is a lot of fun. So, Alex, for those, before we get into some of your, I've asked you to, and you've been gracious enough to offer 3 tips, which is really kind of the foundation for the principles that you teach nonprofit managers and others looking to fund their dreams, fund the kind of good work that they're doing all over the country. And we're going to do that in a little bit later in the show. First of all, I just want to kind of get to understand how you got to this part in your journey. You know, you didn't start as a international consultant and expert in fundraising and nonprofit management and education consulting and the many other things that you do in your portfolio at Forging Alliances. So, Alex Easdale, where did this journey begin for you?
Well, it began in northern Argentina and in the province of Jujuy, which is actually close to the border with Bolivia. And that's where I was born. My mom was actually American who grew up in Argentina. And we were there until I was 9 and a half, actually. Then we migrated over here to Florida. And my dad came first and without speaking English, and basically, started working in a sugar mill sweeping floors. Long story short, as far as my father is concerned, he just retired. And he went from sweeping floors when he first got here to, being the chief of fabrication with 800 people reporting to him. So, he set an example of integrity and hard work and always having a sense of humor, but being good to people and just a very strong leader. And so, he was a very good example. My mom, the same thing, never finished high school. She lost her dad when she was very young. And pretty much she became a teacher assistant. Now she's a professional artist. She lives in Vermont. And again, just, it starts there. It starts with the influence that I had at home. I have, 3 siblings. My sister was born in Argentina. Then we had 2 brothers who were born here. We're very tightly knit, and we're very much a transnational, binational family. So, that's where the journey started. I loved Argentina. I love Argentina, and I go back as much as I can. And what's interesting, Ralph, is that I've traveled throughout, Latin America and throughout this country, for most of my life, especially professionally, for both, pleasure and for work. And I'm very drawn to a few things. And one of them is obviously my home country. The other is this amazing country here. I heard caught a little bit of the State of the Union tonight. And, whatever your politics, I mean, this is a formidable country historically, and it's going to continue hopefully to be that way for a long time. So my journey, basically, it's been that, came here very young, grew up, never lost a link to Latin America, and I've really worked with the Latino community, throughout as an adult, from mentoring. I remember one of my first jobs was fresh out of college. I worked in a summer institute. They call it the Migrant Summer Institute because it was basically for immigrant, kids here in South Florida, mostly, Latino and Haitian, and some, other maybe Jamaican and what have you. And, I did that, for a few summers, and then started working, substitute teaching. And then that's when I got involved with the Argentine consulate. Then I worked with the Free Trade Area of the Americas negotiation process. That sent me to Panama for 2 years. I spent the year in Mexico. My son, actually, I have two boys. My 12-year-old was born in Mexico, 12 years ago, actually almost 13 years ago. And, so again, it's very, very drawn to this hemisphere and to our community. So that's part of my story.
So Alex, first of all, it's always good to, when you have an Argentine around, you got winners in the building. You know what I'm saying? Whether it's, and Papa, who we got, I mean, you talk about a blessed man. He's brought so much to our world. And of course, you guys, a little bit about sports. Congratulations. Of course, Messi won Balón de Oro again. Your hoop, you're pretty good at hoops too, and a few other sports. So you guys are always bring a lot to the table. And Alex, your dad moved up the ranks and into, essentially corporate management, right? By the end of the journey. And your mom, they've done so many things and prepared. You could have done a lot of things, really anything, with your background and your work ethic, Alex, but you really have chosen service as a big part of your path in different parts of your journey. Service is always there. So why do you think ultimately you chose this service-oriented path in your career?
Well, it's not choosing a service-oriented path. I think, you can be service-oriented, within whatever, you do. I mean, it doesn't matter what it is you do. I think, just serving people. And I think I want to go further than serving people or helping people. There's a little bit of condescension in that. I think, it's more about empowering people. Mm-hmm. I love, my favorite word in the English language is empowerment. And I can't find an exact translation in Spanish. Empoderar, but it doesn't have the same, but that's what it's about. So I stumble upon actually Hispanics in philanthropy was my first foray into philanthropy and the nonprofit world, and it was by accident. My son, like I said, was born in Mexico. He was born very premature. He actually was hospitalized for 3 months, and then he had to come to the United States with my young wife. And I decided to quit my job in Mexico and come home. And so I was unemployed, and I looked for work for a few months. And I stumbled upon this opening. And I got the job because of my international experience. They were expanding a transnational program, with Latino communities. And, it was a good fit. And the woman who interviewed me, who ended up being my boss, was Uruguayan. And we hit it off the minute we met. So long story short, that's where I got into, I guess, the nonprofit world. And what's funny is, we're talking about fundraising here. To be honest, I mean, I was a programmatic person. I was in charge of helping design programs and helping implement them. And I had, part of the job was basically leveraging funding and raising money, but I wasn't a fundraiser by any stretch of the imagination, nor did I think, what I was doing was fundraising. I was just building a program, and to build a program and implement it, you need money. So that's how I kind of got into that. But just serving people and helping people is just part of, just what we do. And I think, you can help a lot of people, but, sometimes it's very, very nice to help one person, one person at a time.
That's right. And, getting the resources that we need to do the kind of good work that we do, whether it's a nonprofit in our nonprofit organizations or any special projects or even a corporation, as your company is now a social entrepreneur endeavor, right? It's about getting the resources. So what about this particular part of your portfolio, Alex, that we're going to talk about today, your fundraising expertise? What aspect of this has drawn you to become an expert in this area and really kind of be a leader in this area in particularly the Latino community?
To begin with, I like fundraising. I like a lot of things. I think my favorite thing, is leadership development. That I'm in love with the concept of developing leaderships, and I've learned, from reading a lot on the subject that there's really two types of leaders. The leader that kind of looks to empower people and isn't looking over their shoulder to make sure somebody doesn't step on their toes, or they have a very talented person working for them. They're kind of not shielding themselves, and there's the other type that, delegates a lot. And the other time that really wants their lieutenants to be very involved, communicates with them, teaches them, and hopefully works towards them replacing them at whatever role that is. So that's what I'm truly passionate about. And fundraising is a part of that, fundraising and it has a lot of leadership, but it also has a lot of sales, involved. So a lot of the techniques that, we talk about, are sales. And I've always liked selling, I've always liked, just finding, putting value to something and persuading people. So this is a good fit, I think, to my personality.
Absolutely. And in a second, Alex is going to reveal 3 of the foundations when he consults organizations and nonprofit leaders across the board. I know you do some political fundraising now and fundraising for various types of projects. He's going to share them in a second. I just wanted to remind people that they're listening to or watching. Ray's, how are you, Evangelos, for joining us here. You're watching Ray's talk show with your virtual Big Brother, Ray Collazo. This is the Big Brother Ray community empowers talented people that are just looking for a way to build their online platform, build a brand, transition their career, grow in their career. And we're here to support people in that journey. Thank you so much for joining us. And I have to give a shout out. Donna Gonzalez is not only a loyal supporter of Ray's talk show, she's actually one of my producers. So I want to give Donna a shout out. She's working very hard to bring celebrities like Alex Easdale to the show. And she's doing a wonderful job and always a big supporter of Vanessa and Evangelos that's on. We really appreciate the Blab audience. And again, if you're listening to this as a podcast or on YouTube or on our website, we really appreciate you listening and watching Ray's talk show, a community, again, to help super talented people that just are looking, people that want to serve others, give them the kind of mentorship and community that they need to make a transition, grow in their career, build their business brand, and or in the case of Alex's and Forging Alliances expertise, really acquire the resources that they need to do the good work that they're meant to do. Alex, before we get into the next segment, share a little bit about where people can find more information about Forging Alliances and you on social media. Where can people find you for follow-up questions after this conversation?
Sure. Well, the website is Forging Alliances Consulting. I'm putting it in right now.
Okay, wonderful.
And the email is forgingalliances.usa@gmail.com.
All right. And really quickly, wanted to let people know that for those checking out, we do Ray's talk show every Tuesday and Thursday night. I want to let people know that Thursday night show is going to be with another great friend of mine. Alex is my hermano Argentino, and one of my hermanos Dominicanos is going to join us Thursday night, Danilo Rodriguez, who just got he was my buddy, Alex, I've told you about, that was just came back from a 7-year stint in Dubai. He's doing some really incredible business stuff there. Definitely want to connect you with Danilo at some point, and I'm sure there'll be some areas of collaboration. He's my technology business marketing expert, and he's actually going to be schooling us on what the future holds for virtual reality and immersive multimedia. This is crazy stuff, bro. I mean, this is the technology that's coming out that's on the horizon is really incredible, and how that's going to impact our lives, that's going to impact our business is something that I know people are going to be very interested to hear about. So definitely check us out this Thursday evening, 10 p.m. on Blab. the live stream show with Danilo Rodriguez here on Race Talk Show. So, Alex, you have lots of expertises, but today you're sharing, particularly for our nonprofit managers and people that need to raise some money for the projects that they're working on, the good work that they want to do and continue to just do more of. And so you've been so gracious to share with us today 3 principles of the kind of training and the kind of consultation that you provide for your clients. So, Alex, why don't you start with the first principle that Forging Alliance trains and educates their clients on when it comes to approaching specifically nonprofit fundraising?
Well, I would say the first principle is to think a little bit outside of the box. And I don't mean to sound cliche, but most nonprofits, especially smaller nonprofits, more fledgling nonprofits, that have, maybe less than $50,000 in the bank, just very small nonprofits, they immediately want to start fundraising with foundations. And as you know, Ralph, I mean, you and I work together. That's my bread and butter when it comes to fundraising. I've raised with foundations alone over 10 million, with several groups and on my own. So I understand that world. I understand what it takes to cultivate those relationships. And those organizations, those groups are not ready for that yet. So I guess my first principle would be to think a little bit outside the box. And related to that, meaning that, you don't go for the obvious, which is they all want the foundation money. There's community foundations, statewide, national, international, whatever they are, however big, they want to go immediately after that and grant writing. And they spend a lot of time and resources doing that, and they get their proposals declined. So I think, what you need to do is the first principle really is to develop a fundraising plan. Okay, you need to develop a game plan, a strategy before you go in, to this thing. It's like a football game or soccer, whatever sport. If you don't have a game plan against your opponent, then you're definitely not going to win. Doesn't matter how talented you are. So, that's the first one is definitely you want to plan it. And in your fundraising plan, you want to have diversified sources of funding. Okay, it's like a financial portfolio. You definitely want diversified stocks. You don't want to just put all your apples, in one place.
So if let's say you have a small nonprofit and maybe some initial seed money, or just a small organization, and they're saying, okay, Alex, that makes sense. I can understand why certain foundations wouldn't. I'm not ready for them yet, or I'm not ready to be part of their kind of portfolios. So how do I think outside the box? I'm in a community that nobody's got any money. I work with poor people. They don't have any money. So, the grassroots piece could be a challenge. So give us some thoughts about how people should be thinking. What's a little bit more on how people can execute thinking outside the box?
Okay, well, that's great. So the first thing that I have them do, and I learned this, this is where the political stuff, the political fundraising kind of applies, in my opinion, to the nonprofit fundraising. Mm-hmm. Okay. And most nonprofits don't do this. I would say 99% of nonprofits do not do this. The political people, the first thing you do with a political candidate is you do a mind mapping process with them. Okay. And you get into their networks and you have them, you basically build a list of hopefully thousands of people that they know well, and then that they know, kind of professionally and so on and so forth. So let's look at this as one circle, and then you're in the center. And in that first circle, you have your friends and family, and then the next circle, your professional contacts, and then the biggest circle, your ideological. So where you start with a candidate, obviously, is with, you create a script, you basically coach them up a little bit, and you have them make phone calls to people that they're close to. Okay, these are easy phone calls, and the likelihood of getting funding, even if it's $50 or, in some cases $5 or $10, it doesn't matter. They get funding, so it's a win. Okay, so a couple of things happen. One, before you know it, you've brought in money into, if you're not a candidate, into your campaign, if you're a nonprofit, into your organization. Okay, so you start bringing in money. But secondly, the process is working. Okay, so it's just a question of making the phone calls, following the game plan, and then as you start to get wins, these executive directors or whoever's in charge of doing the fundraising starts to build confidence. Okay, so as that confidence builds, then we get into the more professional networks. These are obviously the likelihood of funding is going to be much lower or a little bit lower, but the amounts are going to be higher. Okay, so once they get to that, past that group, okay, then now they're becoming professional fundraisers. All right, and then we get into the ideological. So what do I mean by ideological? Well, let's say you have an organization that's focused on autism. Okay, well, there's people, who are very, very passionate about the issue of autism. There might be people in your community, maybe in your state, or definitely in the country who are interested, who you might have access to. Okay, so as you do the list building process, which again, you don't do it one time, you do it continually. All right, we find pathways to get to those people. So for example, in South Florida, I have a client called Autism Soccer, and brand new client, I'm working with them. And awesome. You know, this guy is helping autistic kids, he's helping disabled individuals, you know, kids. Okay, and he's doing an amazing job with them on no budget. All right, so he hired a professional to help him. Uruguayan guy, used to be a semi-pro, semi-professional player. I mean, just a great guy. So how do we get him, okay, to sit down with Dan Marino, for example? All right, Dan Marino has an organization. One of Dan Marino's kids is autistic. All right, so how do we get him? All right, so we need to figure out, you know, who can get us to Dan Marino. All right, do we go through his nonprofit or his foundation, or how do we get there? And we figure that out. Okay, so we start with the individuals. That's where I start with nonprofits. If the political candidates can do it, and all the political candidates can offer is basically their ideas and themselves, a nonprofit can offer, you know, a tax deduction. Okay, so it really comes down to, first of all, building up the leader's belief in what it is they're doing. Okay, and they have to believe strong, because it's not easy to get on the phone and ask for money. Nobody likes doing it, or very few people like doing it. So I guess that would be the.
Let me tell you, Alex, you've got 3 books in that answer, and there's so much there, and I want to kind of almost walk it back, because you're going to end up sharing 27 lessons in this conversation. So the first thing is that it's so important what you just said about really kind of taking the time, and whether it's your nonprofit now, an evolved nonprofit, whatever. A lot of people have special projects, special causes that they're getting involved with that are kind of more one-shot deals. Whatever the scenario is, that you take that step back and really develop a mind map of your relationships and your network. People, particularly in our community, just undervalue and underestimate the power of the networks that we have. And so, you know, from thinking about the kind of leadership in our communities that we know, the kind of people that have resources, whether it's financial or others or other contacts, we just underestimate it. And, you know, one of the things that I've been doing, and, you know, we've talked about this, is that one of my goals for 2016 is to get engaged in multiple mastermind groups. And I know you and I have talked about getting, you know, involved in one. Actually, I started my first one-on-one today, because we're not tapping our networks as a community. And, you know, we're friends and we connect with each other, and we say happy birthday on Facebook and all that kind of stuff. But at the end of the day, look, if Alex Easdale calls me, or Donna Hernandez, or Vanessa Rivera, or Evangelos, who I don't know, but I've seen on Blab, if any of these people call me, if they have a cause like, oh my God, I mean, the autism thing, that's such a huge thing that we should always be supporting of causes for autistic children and those kind of similar causes. If you're working on something, you're passionate about it, and me as a friend can't give you $100, $80, unless I'm in some emergency financial situation, I'm not really your friend. And so, you know, we've got to tap our network. And that is so critically important. And of course, be strategic about it. Certain people, you're going to call me and you might ask me for a certain amount because of the nexus of our, judgment call around our personal relationship, and where you have a sense of where I'm at financially in my life. And other people, you're going to sort of measure in different ways. So we have a comment here from Vanessa Rivera on the side here. She just had she did a crowdfunding campaign for a family that had a child, I believe, that had cancer in the family. And her and her network of friends and business partners raised $4,000. Those are the kind of examples that are happening all the time. And of course, now in this age of online crowdfunding and Patreon, these are dynamics that other communities are tapping into. And maybe we use them for those kind of, and thank God you did this, emergencies. We're very good at kind of rallying the troops during a crisis, right? So if there's a hurricane in Latin America, if there was, some sort of natural disaster in our native lands or what have you, we're quick to do these kind of things. Or through church, right? We'll donate to church, we'll give to church. But for these other projects, for whatever reason we get timid. What do you see, Alex, as the barrier oftentimes that you see that people have in taking that step to just reach out to their immediate network, their extended network, and get them invested in their organization?
Fear of rejection. They feel uncomfortable asking their friends for money because they feel that they're asking, for a favor. And so I always take it back before we make a single phone call. And when I talk about scripting, it's not just a script that I prepare for them and say, okay, let's go ahead and make some calls. I have to test your belief. So let's say you hire me, Ralph, okay, and for Ralph's foundation. And, you have a mission, you have everything. But if I don't see the belief, your phone calls aren't going to be effective. You're going to burn through your relationships. So we have to really make sure that you believe in what it is you're raising money for. The example right here, somebody has cancer. So I think, there's a certain sense of urgency there. And there's also a timeline. All right, we need this right now. Okay, so you can apply that to.
Good point.
Yeah, so you apply that to your nonprofit. So you're going to launch and let's say you design a new program, right, to help 100 kids. All right. My wife works on, she applies mindfulness. All right. She has a nonprofit actually called Aham Education. Brand new. It's a year old.
Is that what you guys focus on with your nonprofit, mindfulness?
Yeah. And she's been doing
it's interesting. Shout out Clarissa Romero, who's one of our wonderful New Jersey Latina leaders. She's talked to me about that and actually had discussed coming on the show to discuss it. So Nelly and her could be on the show together. That would be great. I'd love to.
Absolutely.
I'd love to learn more. I don't know much about it. She was sharing it, and I said I think that'd be an excellent topic for our audience. And anyway, so interesting that I didn't realize Nelly was involved in that as well. Definitely should follow up on that.
No, and it's powerful stuff. I mean, it helps. Helps veterans. I mean, the suicide rate among veterans is ridiculous. It's 22 a day. I think is the last stat that I saw, which is just way too much. So what she's doing, is she's heading to that direction. But in any case, you definitely, you have to make sure people are afraid because to answer your question, they're afraid because they don't believe enough and because maybe they've asked before because, maybe they're just shy about it and they're uncomfortable. So what ends up happening is, you basically, they try to do something else. Can we go to a foundation? Can we do this? They don't want to get out of their comfort area. That's just people. We don't like to get out of our comfort zones. We're creatures of habit, and you kind of get shaken up sometimes. And you have to get out of your comfort zone. Then, as quickly as you can, you come back. So you have to understand people. And let me go back to another thing related to the list building process, which I think you actually touched upon. When you're building that list, you definitely want to put you put down how much you believe that person that can contribute comfortably. Okay, so what I have my nonprofit people and others do is I say, okay, so let's say Ralph can donate $100.
It's okay. My associate producer always makes an appearance around 10:30.
I love it. $100 comfortably. So we're going to go ahead and ask Ralph for $200. Okay, because that's going to be a little uncomfortable for you, right? So then when I ask you for 200, you're like, man, that's a good guy. All right, well, you can do 150, even 100. It'll be a huge help. So I hit on 100, you're gonna settle on that. Okay, but I already had you listed for $100.
Yeah, and psychologically, it makes people feel like it makes them feel better, or because it's like, but also bad, right? Because it's like, in that case, you almost feel bad only giving 100 because you probably could give more, but again, it was because of that uncomfort. So that also would set the stage for future asks, right? Because if I gave 100 in the beginning, it has different effects, right? Psychologically,
possibly, and something else, another alternative that I strongly recommend is ask for a recurring donation. Okay, sure. And be upfront. Say, look, I don't want to be calling you every month to ask for a donation. You're my friend. Okay, so why don't you donate $20 a month for a year? Okay, that's going to be $240, and that's going to help actually one kid throughout this whole program. Sponsor one child for the whole program, and that'll make you a gold sponsor, and we'll put you in the list of individual donors on our website. So it's like, oh, okay, so there's something in it for me on top of helping a child, and then go a step further, and then when the program is over, have that child handwrite a letter or just type a letter with that kid signing it, saying thank you so much for your support. Because somebody donates to you and then they get something like that, you report back and they see that the donation went to the child. Okay, I promise you, they're gonna donate again. And
yeah, one of the. What do you recommend in terms of? One of the things I know that in the political world we often kind of advise politicians and people running for office is you really have to schedule. You have to be very deliberate about when you schedule the what we call call time, right? So it has to be a set time. It has to be in time when it's non-negotiable, right? In terms of where you can find an excuse to do something else. And then, so how do you recommend they schedule it, the setting, give people an insight in terms of kind of how you kind of set the stage for executive directors and leaders to make these phone calls?
Well, whether it's with a consultant, whether it's with a staff person, I recommend you do it with somebody. Even if you're a self-starter, even if you're disciplined, do it with, if you have an assistant, make sure that your assistant is there with you because they're going to hold you accountable. All right. You're the leader. So if you keep scheduling time with that assistant or whoever it is you're going to do call time with, and you're constantly, canceling it, and, they're going to start questioning your leadership, first of all. All right. So you have to make sure to hold yourself accountable and schedule, I wouldn't schedule it every single day. All right. You don't want to do that to yourself. Okay. In a nonprofit, it's not like a campaign. A nonprofit, hopefully will be around for a long time. You don't need to make fundraising calls every day, but do it at least 3 times a week. Okay. Start with an hour of call time. And I promise you, my experience is that when you start with an hour of call time and you've made 3 or 4 phone calls, and now you and maybe you got a donation out of one of those 3 or 4 first phone calls, all of a sudden you start feeling it. And before you know it, you've been on the phone 2.5 hours, 3 hours. It happens all the time. So, but as you do your call time, you need to have a goal, whatever that goal is. So let's say, for example, today I'm going to raise in my call time $500. All right, so that's your goal, okay? And make the goal realistic, okay, but kind of high. Push yourself a little bit, okay? Maybe it's 1,000, maybe it's 10,000, depends on the nonprofit and the level of your contacts and your ability as well.
The other part of this, Alex, which I think is really important, is that one of the things I see specifically for Latino nonprofits, I think it's a cultural thing, even with Latino political candidates, especially the political candidates that do it for the first time, is that this piece is so important because it can be such a time saver. And this is why I'm going to say that, is that oftentimes, again, culturally, we feel more comfortable raising money, selling tickets, maybe getting sponsorship for events, cultural events, bailes, banquetes, cookouts, whatever the sort of, Latino summer festivals. And look, I love all that stuff and I try to support those things. And I think they're important, particularly, for branding for organizations and for, for cultural awareness. I mean, there's a value to that. But what ends up happening is that because we put so much of our limited time in sort of this sort of grassroots outside the box fundraising on these events, is that it becomes a profit margin issue. So, you want to bring a band or you want to do something really nice that can cost a decent amount of money. And, you've done all this work and, maybe you're a you only made 20, 30 grand, even though maybe you raised $200,000 just because of the nature of the activity, when you could have maybe raised a little less money, but you could have made essentially pure profit in that sense, in nonprofit sense. You could have saved a lot of time and a lot of resources because, as you know, with these organizations for major events, a lot of times everything just stops. The whole staff isn't doing, has to basically become event planners. And it just takes a lot of time and energy.
Yeah. Well, I was going to speak about events as maybe another component of this, but I think you're absolutely right. You hit the nail on the head. I mean, you want to make sure that, with an event, first of all, you want to have a corporate, sponsorship packet. Okay. First of all, and you want to get corporate sponsors, and you have 2 kinds of corporate sponsors, those that donate money and those that donate in kind. So if you're going to have a band or if you're going to have something, of that nature or food or what have you, then have it donated. Okay. Or maybe half price or what have you. Okay. So absolutely. You don't want to continue to be doing events which stress out and distract your staff. Okay. And to raise $10,000. All right.
Yeah.
Look for maybe, small house parties, types of events that, you don't have to do too much. And something else very important with an event is all right, get yourself a host committee, not necessarily within your nonprofit, but other leaders who support you. Right? And say, okay, you're in charge of raising $5,000 to $10,000. Here's the amount for you. Here's the amount for you. And however you want to do that, okay? And then all of a sudden you start to delegate some of this, not only top down, but also, same level as you are.
Absolutely. We have a question. Albert Garcia, one of our brothers, has chimed in here. He has a comment. Nothing seems to replace the power of individual conversations. Hey, that's why Blab is happening, brother. Do you think, Alex? Do you think that technology, emailing, texting, IMing, could be just as good as a phone call or even face to face? So, where in your mind, where does the communications through technology fall into your planning and your advice to nonprofit managers?
Well, I agree with that's a great question. I agree with Albert. The power. First of all, your face-to-face meeting is the most effective. Okay, that's the most. If I make an ask right now of you, okay, Ralph, you're gonna say yes. I mean, it's gonna be very hard for you to say no. I see you face to face. But if we're sitting down having a cup of coffee together, then it's 80%. Okay, that you're gonna say yes.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So the second alternative is a phone call. Okay, you can't be meeting with people all day because you just don't have that kind of time and resources and what have you. So phone call is your next best alternative. The texting and the IMing it's effective. Maybe I'll give you an example. I was doing some fundraising calls, and I called a colleague of mine. Okay, we're close enough, but not that close. All right, so he made a pledge, but he couldn't do it right because he said I'll donate. I think it was 150. I said, okay, well, let's do it right now. I have the website open. Give me the information. Let's get over it.
That's how you got to do it, brother. Yeah.
That's it. Let's do it now. I don't want to keep nagging you. And he's like, man, I can't right now. I don't have it right now. Oh, man, don't worry about it. When will you have it? So I'll follow up with you. I'm going to have it next Friday. Great. Okay, so next Friday, I call him up again. No answer. This is common, by the way. You start to chase these pledges, right? No answer, so I left him alone. So Monday or Tuesday, I'm sending him. That's when you send the text. Okay, yeah. Little reminder. Reminded him, I think it was 2 times via text because I didn't want to keep calling him. Okay, and then before I know it, his donation hit the account, and he texts me back. He's like, "Man, I'm sorry it took me so long, but I made a donation." So then I was doing this for my wife. So then I had her call him to thank. Okay?
There you go.
Whenever somebody gives you money, you have to thank. Okay, and mean it.
Absolutely. So we're talking to Alex Easdale from Forging Alliances and on Race Talk Show here with your host, your virtual big brother, Ray Collazo. He's kicking some knowledge, no doubt about it, about fundraising best practices, particularly for our nonprofits, but these are principles you can use for any sort of fundraising for special projects, political candidates, what have you. What's your second tip you'd like to share with our audience today here about fundraising principles that you consult your clients with at Forging Alliances, Alex?
The second principle is that definitely as you're doing this individual donor fundraising and you're getting money in the bank, start to do your research for institutional fundraising. Okay, there's some good resources out there. My favorite is Foundation Center. Okay, start to cultivate those relationships. So the tip would be do your research and then begin to cultivate the relationships with the foundations. Do not come at them and immediately ask for money. Okay, so for example, same thing. You can do this during call time. All right, you send an email, maybe the funder responded, maybe he didn't. Most times they will. If the funder responds, okay, so the email basically is drafted, I would like your advice on some of our programs. I believe there are synergies with your funding priorities. Can we have a brief conversation to talk about those synergies? That's it. So in that conversation, obviously the funder understands that you want funding from them, but it's how you do it. You do it professionally, and you have to understand that in these foundations, they don't. The people who you're going to be in contact with, the program officers or program directors, they're professionals just like you. They have a job. It's not their money. Okay. So what does a program officer want? A program officer wants to look good. He wants to have a good portfolio of nonprofits that he's funding, so he looks good to his bosses because he has a career to think about. Okay, so you want to be one of those nonprofits that stand out to them. So if you start professionally and you get to the point and you're not asking for money immediately, that would be a very important tip.
Yeah, one of the things I find is that there definitely is and part of this is the lack of diversity in the foundation world, we've talked about a lot, Alex, but the lack of relationships really impacts Latino nonprofit managers. They just don't, there's a lot of, they feel like they're starting from like square, minus 17. They don't feel like they have any kind of connection with these folks. They feel it's distant, intimidating. So for those
Yeah.
So for those leaders, I'm sure you've dealt with this and consulted all the time. I mean, even before you get to that point where you start the relationship, how do they start it? I mean, obviously you can always reach out cold, but there definitely seems to be, it feels like such a large mountain to climb for many emerging leaders to develop those kind of long-term relationships with people that they may not feel comfortable with. They don't relate to on some levels.
Well, I mean, you need to, again, get out of your comfort zone and learn how to relate to people and get over your fear of being intimidated by somebody who appears to be very important. Again, they're professionals with a job. Okay. Now, if you have access, or you can get access to the head of the foundation, or if it's a private, family foundation, then they're the ones, it's their money. But even so, they're just people. Okay. So how I would recommend you start, don't start with the Ford Foundation. Okay. Why don't we start with your local community foundation? Okay. Let's start with, Reading Community Foundation, if such a foundation exists. Okay. Or the Miami Community Foundation, or whatever, and start there. Okay. And again, it goes back to the research. Do your foundation research. You can do it in the foundation center, and basically build yourself a list of funders who fund what it is you're doing. Okay, so if you're an arts organization, don't go for funders who fund health, because that's just not a good fit. You want to find organizations that fund art, okay, or arts and culture, what have you.
Yeah, the other part of it, Alex, is that, as we say in the street, the struggle is real. And there's lots of studies and there's been lots of conversations in our circles, Alex, and with Latinos that are interested and engaged in nonprofit management, philanthropy, and service. That we're not getting our fair share. There's no question about it.
No, we're not.
So it is a difficult balance, right? Because we want to advocate for more diverse spending and deeper investment in our community. But at the same time, we don't want to bite the hand that feeds us, because, we're sort of on the front lines of this as executive directors and senior managers at organizations. So you have any thoughts on that, Alex? I mean, it is, again, a lot of executive directors are going to see this and listen to this conversation. So I was just curious what your thoughts were about that ongoing issue, that we have to be advocates for lending across the board. But we have to be, we have to have a relationship with these people. So it can be politically very tricky.
Well, it's a couple of things. One, I remember from my days in Hispanics and philanthropy, I think the stat was 1.5% of philanthropic dollars go to Latino-led nonprofits. I mean, just think about that stat for a minute. Right now, I think it's maybe 2.1%, give or take. We're 50 million Latinos in this country. Okay,
it's 60, dog. It's 55 plus Puerto Rico plus whoever don't get counted. So we're plus who's getting born. What time is it? It's 60. But yeah, I mean, it's incredible. Yeah, I tell people it's like it's Venezuela and Colombia together. I mean, it's unbelievable. I mean, it's amazing.
Yeah, it's a bigger country than Argentina, the Latino population. And the other point here, there's a couple more things. One,
nothing's bigger than Argentina, but anyway.
The other thing is, I mean, you made me lost my train of thought now. You have me thinking about Argentina.
Well, no, I was talking about the politics of, advocating for diversity and funding in the nonprofit space. That's really
we need more Latinos, okay, in working for the Ford Foundation. Okay, we need more Latino program officers and Latina program officers. Okay, and starting with your community foundations, your private, at all levels, okay, and let them sit at the table where the decisions are made. It's funny because I played the role of funder as well before, and it's so funny how decisions are made. Huh? You would think that it's a competitive, and it is a competitive process, but there's a lot of bias that goes into it.
There's a lot of relationship stuff, a lot of politics.
Already kind of shoot in. There's projects that aren't as good as the other ones that don't get funded. Okay, so who's sitting at the table making those decisions? We need our representation. So I would encourage Latino professionals to consider a career in philanthropy. All right, I mean, working for a foundation, first of all, it's a very stable job and it pays well. Okay, so that, maybe a lot of nonprofit executive directors have moved on. I think that's a great step.
Absolutely. I tell people, and this also is true in the political world, that, and it's the orientation of why we got into work in the first place, right? So whether it's politics or, community service, nonprofit work is that there's plenty of Latinos that have plenty of skill sets as it relates to being the practitioners, the social workers, the program managers, the activists, because it comes from this activist, tradition that we have, and the organizers. We got plenty of people to do that stuff,
Right.
and not to say we couldn't have more, but then we have this gap, whether it's nonprofit management or in politics, for the data management side of things. So if people saw the issue with Van and GP, that whole controversy with Sanders' campaign having access to Hillary's data. I know all the people that were in that whole bochinche, because of political stuff, and it's the whitest male world in the world because we don't encourage, and we haven't developed in our own community. We have not encouraged and trained enough Latinos to move up the ranks, whether it's politics or the nonprofit world, in data management. And on the nonprofit side, what's happening is that, as you know, Alex, that foundations and donors are increasingly becoming data driven. So they're driving our organizations to create more sophisticated data systems. And that can be very complicated because this funder wants ETO, this funder wants another system. The kind of work we do doesn't necessarily vibe with either one of those. And so there's a lot of gaps with organizations building that skill set. Also, same for the fundraising piece. I mean, we have my goodness. I mean, it's, and this happens in political campaigns where they don't necessarily groom the Latinos to be the fundraiser, because guess what? The fundraiser is always the first one that gets hired and probably gets paid the best in a campaign, because if you don't have sales, you don't have anything going on. So, we have to develop these skill sets, encourage people to get involved in these other parts of the work, which can give them flexibility, move up in their careers, doing all kinds of things. And I don't believe you went from, I believe, nonprofit fundraising to delve into the political fundraising because of your skill set that was transferable. So,
right.
So that piece is very important. We have sort of a double question here. I'm going to combine these two questions. So one of our audience members basically has a community project, and she's struggling with the idea of, does she create it, make it a nonprofit, and sort of, which could create more headaches and more management when she really wants to kind of focus on the work and kind of just do it ad hoc. And so her struggles with that piece, and Elbert Garcia chimed in here and said, well, part of the answer could be, developing a fiscal sponsorship relationship with another organization. So, Alex, I know you see this all the time where a project may come up that, maybe isn't fleshed out to the point where it wants to create its own 501c3, but, needs to be fiscally responsible and maybe needs that kind of incubation. So what are your thoughts about projects that are considering their options?
Well, if you're not 100% ready to start your own nonprofit, and you go the fiscal sponsor route, then I strongly recommend that. Okay, you can join, with another group doing great work, and bring them an added value as well. Okay, because you understand that if you come on with a fiscal sponsor, you're gonna have to, I think it's 10% would be the standard, whatever you raise that organization, which I think is a fair trade-off, because you're using their name and you're also going to use maybe some of their resources as well. So I would consider going that route, and I wouldn't delve into starting a nonprofit or a business unless you're really, really ready to do it. Okay, you know what you're doing.
Well, that's excellent, and hope that answers Vanessa's question. Okay, good. Well, I'm glad you liked it. She liked the suggestion. So Alex is here for you. No question about it. What's your third tip, Alex? On God, we have you all night. There's so many elements to this. What's your third tip for nonprofit organizations that you help consult on fundraising? You'd like to share today?
Yeah, there's a lot. You know what? I'm going to go ahead and go the reporting route. All right, I'm going to go the metrics route. So you've gotten the funding for your program, okay? You've hopefully raised individual money, leveraged it with some institutional money, some corporate money through some events, okay? And you've raised enough money, and you're going to implement a project that has a target population of, 100 kids, okay, to do X, Y, and Z. Maybe it's a nutritional program, whatever it is, whatever your metrics are, okay, you need to hold to those metrics, okay? And you need to report those metrics back to people, all right? Obviously, the foundations require you to report either after 6 months or after a year, or, if it's a multi-year grant, then, once a year, what have you. All right. That's very important. And I'll give you an example. When I was with Hispanics in Philanthropy, they were great at fundraising. They were terrible at reporting. I kind of got into fundraising. Yeah.
Latinos, nah, no.
Yeah. So we were behind on reports. I'm talking about MacArthur Foundation. Major donors. Okay. And I'm like, I'm really behind with these reports. So report back and do what I mentioned that my wife, that Nelly does, with her nonprofit, having those kids send letters to the individual donors. Okay. That's also a report. She also sends out an email, with all the metrics for the year. Very, very well designed, very short. Okay. But that's also a report. People see that, their money actually took effect and was a good investment. So that would be my third tip.
Absolutely. Very important. And, if you get sloppy with that, you could have some issues, whether it's with the IRS or, even potentially it threatening the existence of your 501c3 status. So it's something you have to prioritize. You cannot play around with that. Utilizing these modern tools make it easier, right? In terms of being able to maintain databases and maintain information. The other part of that is that, there's always, and it goes to the relationship, and it goes to what you alluded to earlier, Alex, is that beyond the report, there's always selling yourself. And what I find is that, utilizing things even as simple videos, there's just something about helping the tools you need. You could use the visual tools you can use to tell a story. In my day work, I work in political organizing on a fairly high level. And, I'm actually going to be meeting with the funder tomorrow, and they're very happy with me and the work that we've done. And I know part of it was when I had those key moments, when it was connecting with elected officials, getting, sort of swing leaders to support us, getting that on video, getting people saying publicly, I could put in a report that so-and-so said this publicly, but to have that video and to have those kind of testimonials and to have that kind of documentation, I know it takes it, I know it takes the impact. They're never going to admit it, but these videos, documenting this stuff, the right picture, the right visualization, the right tool, you can't underestimate that. Not a lot of times that's not going to be in a report, but beyond a report, you want to be able to tell your story and utilize the tools we have. And the bottom line is it is about telling your story. And, you can say I've serviced, 100 autistic kids played soccer in our program, but to be able to hear about one kid, that's just going to go so far,
Well, the story that's a great point. The story is very powerful. You bore people with facts. You want to have some facts, obviously. You want to have some data, but the story is what people tend to make decisions based on emotion, anyways. So if I call you and I sound like a robot, and even though I have the greatest program in the world, but I don't sound excited or I don't sound emotional about it a little bit, tell you a story, then you're not going to fund me, or you'll give less than you would have given had it been otherwise. So
that's right.
Absolutely.
And everyone has different styles. I'm some would say not lucky, but because I'm chatty, but I'm lucky in that I wear it out here, and people know I'm passionate about what I'm involved in. And but not everyone. People that aren't as outgoing naturally as I am, that doesn't mean people don't see that passion. I have a great friend out in, she lives in the St. Louis area now, Yvonne Maldonado, and she was always, and a very good friend of Albert that's on joining us here today, always like the head of something in the college senate and all that stuff. And she never said anything. But she was such an effective leader because every moment she was focused on what we were doing. And you could, because of her diligence, we could all see the passion she had for the work. And, she showed a lot of great leadership. Not all of our, look, President Obama himself is an example, probably in his heart is kind of an introverted guy, right? And so, but, the people that connect with them see that passion and see that focus. So, we can all have different types of styles. You don't have to be loud mouths like I am for people to see that passion and see that enthusiasm. Doesn't hurt, I guess, but at times. But those are kind of things. The last thing I wanted to ask you on the data management stuff, Alex, is that's also becoming increasingly important for fundraising. is
Oh, yeah.
data systems. You have a thought about that in terms of nonprofits that could better utilize those kind of tools for the fundraising that they're doing?
My wife is looking at me here. Absolutely, you need some data systems. Metrics, metrics. You want to document everything. You want, this is very, very important. You want to see what's working, what's not working, and you need the tools and the systems to tell you why. You need people who know how to use those systems. A lot of executive directors, a lot of top leaders are terrible when it comes to that stuff. So they need to find people who are good at that stuff and who like doing it. So it all dovetails. And a quick point on grant writing, actually. Most of your funding applications now are online. Okay, I mean, even the small foundations now require you to do them online with character limits. So your writing, first of all, has to be a lot better because you can put less. And if you're wordy, like I am, or like you, Ralph, then it's hard for us because we write all this nice stuff, but then we have to shorten it by half. What ends up happening is I worked with a client named Civic Nation. They're running the College Promise campaign to make community college free for everybody, and did a few grants for them. We raised a lot of money, okay, and we raised a lot of money for two reasons. One, because the person who's in charge of Civic Nation is somebody who's very influential and has access to the leaders, of some of these major foundations. But the other piece was the grant writing. And we noticed, myself and the person working on this internally, by the third grant that we did together, the writing was so much better. It was painful, but it was so much better. So, people need to be savvy with data systems, with online, with it's just a different world. The days of submitting a nice narrative to
That's right, and these tools, and we can talk about this in future appearances, Alex, can also help you with the research part in terms of understanding who the major donor is, who the foundation is. You can Google, but only so much. And there's different repositories for that information.
No, Google's only going to be your best tool. But you need somebody who can do those things and who likes doing it. You can start with them.
Okay? That's right.
And I guess one more tip, or just a thought of mine. Don't let nonprofit mean that you're going to be broke. Okay, people need to get paid. All right, a nonprofit professional, you need to get paid. I'm not talking maybe $200,000 a year, but I mean, a good salary. Okay, a good professional salary. That needs to be important because you want to attract top people. So that intern, maybe you can become a paid internship, and maybe she can become an assistant, and maybe she can become a director.
That's right. Amen, brother. No doubt about it. I know you'll get a lot of these on Blab with our network taking it out. The last question we have from the audience, and again, we really appreciate our Blab audience here, Donna, Vanessa, Elbert, and others that are joining us today. Elbert chimes in. The data collection, sort of telling the story, Alex, oftentimes is sort of extra work other than the sort of formal paperwork that a lot of times our funders are requesting. So how do we build buy-in to taking the pictures and doing that extra documentation to tell our stories with our staff?
That's a great question. I'll give you an example.
Okay? Bro, this race talk show, dog. I mean, we got a number of good questions, no doubt.
Yeah, this Albert guy is smart.
Well, he's one of my buddies that lives in South Florida. I mean, there's a lot of synergy here. Got to connect you guys.
So, okay, they used to send me with Hispanics in Philanthropy. I used to go to Latin America a lot. Most of these trips I would take alone, right? And I would go on site visits. And at the time, I wasn't very good at documenting things. So I would get back and, I sometimes I'm a guy, I don't communicate everything that happened either. So my boss started asking me, she's like, so what the hell happened over there in Dominican Republic? How was the site? Right. So, right. So she says, if you don't tell the story is lost with you. Yeah. Okay. That's all she had to say. From there on out, I started taking pictures, started documenting, started quoting people. I mean, you have to build that in. And people need to understand why it's so important. And they need to understand that, the reason why I think I've been effective as a fundraiser is because I'm a programs person who became a fundraiser. Okay, so I understand the programs. And I understand the importance of implementing them. There's a lot of fundraisers, and I'm not knocking on them, but who don't really understand the program. So if you're a fundraiser or want to be a fundraiser, you need to understand the program and tell that story. Okay, and to do that, you need to get out there in the field. And the field people, on the other hand, remember in Democracia, they didn't know what we were doing in development, right? So I would call them and ask them for their stories, and some of them seemed like annoyed with it. And I would explain, I'm like, listen, your stories was helping us sell. All right, the funder to give us money for you to keep working, okay, and empower people. So there needs to be buy-in, and that's where the leadership component is very important. You need to have leaders, not one. Getting people to buy in.
That's right, and that transparency, and it also is a tool to let people know the good work that you're doing, right? So there's also a public relations element to it. So it's not just going to be for funders; it's going to be for the media. It's going to be for community stakeholders to really know what they're doing and really to put a face on that impact. I mean, there was times, and for those that aren't familiar, Alex and I are former coworkers with an organization, advocacy organization. A lot of good work no longer exists, but a lot of great work, and particularly the civic engagement arena for Latino communities around the country. And it was founded in South Florida, where Alex is from. And, there was often times where I would go with our executive director for, to talk to our board, to talk to our to foundations, fundraising conversations, basically. Yeah. And that it never failed that I would go in prepared to talk about numbers and reports. And then when it came to showtime, I talked about our team. And I don't know how many times I talked to donors and funders and board members about Gabrielina Polanco. It always went to the women, Mercedes, our tias at Democracia, and some of the younger ones too, Sandra and Yanitzi and Donna. I mean, so many wonderful people that we worked with. And, those were some of my proudest moments at working with that organization. And most people never saw them but because it really spoke to, I was able to share. And I guess in the moments we kind of needed the most for the money, I kind of felt like I was able to kind of just at our best moments, we need to share those stories. And, beyond the people that we served, the people that did the work. And I always have said that the story of those women, particularly in South Florida, Alex, those canvassers that Mercedes and Sandra and Natalie and Luis managed. I mean, you talk about the people that are going to build an even greater country, despite all the nonsense. I mean, immigrant women, incredible stories from Latin America, as you remember, Alex. And, I tell that, I said, if anyone here deserves a reality show or a documentary, it's Mercedes and those women and Luis and all those people. So anyway, those are the kind of stories we need to share. And that's why we have Race Talk Show with wonderful friends that share mentorship, incredible inspiration and information, like the president of Forging Alliances, our dear friend, Alex Easdale. Alex, for those that want to follow up with you, maybe they want to utilize your services to raise money for their project organization, we're going to definitely forward this as a podcast and video show to all the EDs that we know and a lot of our senior folks that are excited to listen and watch this show. Let people know where they can find you and social media and how they can connect with Forging Alliances.
Yeah, email forgingalliances.usa@gmail, www.forgingalliancesconsulting.com. And just send me an email. You can call me at 754-779-1991. Just shoot me a text.
Absolutely fantastic. And I know Forging Alliances has on occasion, particularly for those groups in Florida, those leaders in Florida, has training sessions, whether it's in various levels of nonprofit management, fundraising, and other management related seminars. So if you're based in particularly in Florida, you can see you can arrange something fairly quickly to connect with Alex. And Alex is always traveling. I know he's just done some work in Texas and Latin America with his political fundraising work. So got a lot going on, this brother, man. Well, Alex, we appreciate you. I know it's getting late in the East Coast, and we appreciate your time here and sharing with the Blab community, the Race Talk, Big Brother Ray community, and of course our podcast audience. Alex, any final words from you and what you're doing with Forging Alliances?
No, I just understand that it's second consulting firm that we've launched, and I say we because my wife Nelly is Nelly Bisham. She's
the brain behind the operation, Nelly, no doubt. Much respect to Nelly.
Yeah, pretty much, yeah. But this is going into the second year, so I understand how much work, and I work harder now with my own business than I used to, at my last position, which was a pretty high level position, with a lot of responsibility. But I'm passionate about what I'm doing. So my last thoughts are basically be passionate about what you're doing, okay? Love what you're doing and own it. if you don't feel that way, maybe you need to think, start thinking about doing something else, to be perfectly honest. So, as far as fundraising, again, it's your belief, and just get a little uncomfortable, and, get yourself some people that can help you.
Yeah, no, and my last bit of advice to you, Alex, is you need to get on Blab more, dog. I mean, obviously you have an open invitation to join us here at Race Talk Show, but one of the things that I'm finding in video streaming is where it's at in 2016. I'm finding, particularly with the Blab community, there's a lot of practitioners, people that are that have specific, whether they're life coaches, trainers, people that work in different fields are looking for like-minded people. So I think for fellow fundraisers, fellow managers and executives, I think you would find it'd be an interesting thing to think about, having even on a monthly basis, a chat with people that are engaged in philanthropy and nonprofit fundraising. So anyway, something to think about. You've got a lot to share, Alex. And again, we appreciate Alex Easdale's participation here on Race Talk Show and Forging Alliances community. Nelly and the rest of your team there at Forging Alliances, definitely check them out and check out Alex Easdale online. And you've been listening to your virtual Big Brother Ray Collazo here on Race Talk Show. Check us out again at bigbbrotherray.com. Always check out Ray's Talk Show every Tuesday and Thursday night, 10 p.m. Eastern. And check us out at bigbrotherray.com and Ray's podcast on iTunes. Thank you so much, Alex, and the rest of our Rays of Light that joined us today, and have a wonderful day.
Thank